Okay, looks like we are live again. Hello everybody, this is Aman, CEO of Sandpram, and in today's video I'm going to talk about a very common problem that shows up in especially for SMB companies which are trying to build some kind of software, and they hire some development shop or freelancers online to build their dream app for them, and they end up getting burned, right? So this video is about how to avoid the how to I mean, you can't always completely avoid things going south, but what you can do is go get 90% of the way there, right? So in this video, I'm gonna introduce a couple of um, a few things to keep in mind that could greatly help you have a better experience. So how to avoid getting burned by a software development firm, okay, or agency, whatever you call it. Now, the first thing to realize uh, is that you have to know what you want, right? That's the number one thing. So top three um, pieces of advice, right? Number one is know what you want. You know, the developers are not there to solve your problems, okay? They are there to implement the solution you already have in mind. Okay, this is extremely critical. You may look for somebody who you can just describe your idea and they will just build it, right? You might be looking for somebody like that. However, if you're outsourcing software development, most likely you will not find a team which can actually solve your problems better than you can, okay? So whether it's about design or it's about that business consulting of what you should build and how you should go about building it, um, those techno business decisions about the product roadmap and features and whatnot, all of that has to come from you, right? The developers cannot decide to you know build some if you let the developers decide what they're going to build and how they're going to build it, or like the approach to how your app will be structured, then you can be pretty much 90% sure that you're going to end up having to burn that whole project down, even if it's successful. Like, just you can just assume that you're basically just putting that money down the drain. Okay. Now the other thing is, don't go with your gut feeling while hiring um, engineers or freelancers, while hiring engineers, right? Or while hiring the vendor. Okay. And what I mean is, how nice they are doesn't matter. How nice are, like, so how nice they are doesn't matter. Um, how confident they are doesn't matter, right? A lot of times they will make you, the salesperson will make you feel like, wow, you're in really good hands, okay? Or there will be a project manager who will make you feel like, wow, you're in really good hands. Like, this person is, you know, uh, they just seem so confident they can build it, right? And they just quote you a price, and they show you when things make sense. They lay out like a milestone plan, and they ask you to pay money in installments and whatnot. Like it all seems very legit, right? They've done it 100 times, but I don't recommend that you go with your gut. Don't go by those factors. We will talk about what factors you should be looking for, but how nice or sweet they are and how confident they seem are not the factors that you should be looking after. Okay. And the third one is, be reasonable and be human. Okay, don't be a nightmare, don't be a difficult client, or I mean, you have to be a difficult client, but don't be a nightmare client, because the very best, sought after agencies will typically not work for you if you're not nice, right? The best ones have a lot of choice, and the ones that are not that good will take any project regardless of how big of an asshole their client is, right? So the best dev shops will not work with a-holes. Okay, if they do, that's a telling sign. Okay, so those are the top 3 pieces of advice. But now here's the thing. Let's go into a few more details, right? Let's start with knowing what you want, right? You do not just tell them what features you want them to build. Okay, and of course there's like so much, so many factors here, so I can't really go into all of them in a short video, but I'll just give you a quick overview, and I'll link to a blog post where you can read about them in detail, right? But number one, you do not just tell them what features you want to build. You tell them what parts of the system so what instead of features of an app, you need to tell them what parts of the system they need to build. Now, what does that mean? When I say features of an app, it basically means, oh, I just want to be able to do this, right? You might show them a reference app that you want them to copy or something like that, right? But when you talk about what parts of the system they need to build, it's much more granular. So basically you're telling them like, hey, I want a front end which has these specifications. I want a back end architecture that has these functional blocks in a way. I want this kind of database, and we can talk about that, what kind of database we need. I want these kinds of services. I want these kinds of APIs, right? That's a very different conversation than saying, oh, I just want an app with a news feed and the ability to like photos and add photo filters, right? That's features of an app, but what you want to tell them is parts of a system. And here's why. If you just tell them features that you want, there are a million ways to build the exact same features that you asked them for while building a terrible app, a terrible backend system that will crumble as soon as you want to make changes or as soon as you hit even a little bit of scale, right? I've seen this happen a lot of times. Like it's like a restaurant with a really, you know, great exterior, like a great seating area, but the kitchen is a complete mess where that the kitchen is barely hanging on, and it's basically a ticking time bomb in the kitchen because you didn't spent any time figuring out the operational side, right? So it's kind of similar, where you want to build, you want to have the technical fluency to tell them what you want them to build, not how you want them to use, or not how you want to use, but whatever they build for you, right? Now, the other thing is, so that's the first one, right? These all, like, show them, on top of that, you do want to show them features, so show them as many wireframes, prototypes as possible, um, pre-decided by your own team, right? So basically, you need to do that. Don't let the developers figure out. Let me just write this down. Don't let the devs, don't let the dev shop decide for themselves what the final app design would be like. Okay, just don't. Um, then, okay, so these are the big ones. Then the third one is extremely good communication. You know, always ensure extremely good communication. The smallest um, slip should be a yellow flag, and a few weeks of silence or confusing signals are a huge red flag. Okay. Now, what do I mean? They need to be, both of you need to be, both sides need to be proactive in communication. Right? If you find that you're not hearing from them often, hearing any updates from them very often, you know, talk to them about it. And the best way to do it is decide on a pre-written, or pre-decide on a communication schedule with the development shop. Okay. And then, I mean, these like these three details should pretty much cover most of the problems. And the fourth one is, where to find good developers, right? Where do you find the best dev shops? Now, obviously, that's a not a solved problem. Oh, by the way, never pay upfront for the whole thing. Use yeah, just never pay upfront for the whole thing. Pay in installments for when they build specific uh, parts of the app, of the system, and pay close attention. Okay, that's just in passing, I just remembered. So these three should pretty much help you with most of the danger zones, right? Um, Now, where do you find people? I would honestly say I don't care. But if you do talk to anybody, whether it's somebody you find on Upwork, or you find somebody on Fiverr, or some other platform, or you just do a Google search, or you just reach out to a few firms, or you get a reference, whatever that is, how to vet or filter good dev shops, it goes back to one critical thing, okay? One critical thing that, pretty much replaces all of them. Heart of a teacher, okay? If they are willing to educate you for free on the engineering side, I mean, if you ask them to explain, of course, because some of them, some of them are, used to not. They're used to dealing with non-technical clients who don't care to ask like how does their stuff work and what they're doing and why they would do it that way. So they might not take the initiative of trying to explain the technical stuff to you, but if you take the initiative of asking them to explain to you, asking them to educate you about, what decisions they're making, how they're building, um, and they show patience with patience, right? And basically give you, you know, some consulting or advice that helps you regardless of whether you work with them or not. That's a green sign, the green signal. You know, that's one, right? If they, are proactive with giving you tools to manage and also the communication schedule, that's a green sign. That's a good sign. Not a green sign, but that's a good sign, right? If they, yeah, these two should be pretty straightforward. Um, but yeah, the main thing is they act like a doctor, and although the very first one, the very first piece of advice was that you should tell them you shouldn't rely on them to solve your problems, right here, but you can rely on them to teach you how to implement, or how do they work, or if they want to correct your approach or something like that. Those are the biggest factors, and of course the price would depend on you. But here's the thing: when it comes to price, I would highly recommend, you know, cross comparing with, you know, three different dev firms, or I would say three different high quality dev firms from various geographies. Okay. I've heard of some, people spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a dev firm because it was, close to them geographically, and turns out that, you know, the app they were trying to build was nowhere near worth that kind of money, right? Like they could have just hired a whole team of engineers, build a freaking company of, a tech company with that kind of money by hiring people from Vietnam or somewhere, right? So don't spend too much money until you're sure that you cannot get a better deal anywhere else. Okay. Second, look in, less expensive geographies first and find, you know, the best ones before giving up and choosing, North America or etc. And the reason for that is simple. Like if you can find somebody, like it's just the harsh reality. Like developer hours cost, different money in different geographies. If you look at Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia or South Asia, even sometimes the Middle East, or maybe not the Middle East, they have a talent crunch in a way. Um, but yeah, like you do want to make sure that you work with high quality dev firms. I would also recommend, don't go after the cheapest geography. So basically, it's not like, oh, I've heard that Ethiopia has a very poor region, so I'm just going to find a software development firm from there, right? I mean, okay, there might be some, good software development firms in Ethiopia, I wouldn't be surprised, but just simply relying on price to decide where to look is also like kind of the other extreme, where it's not really helpful to you for your goals, right? So these were, the main big pieces of advice I had for anybody who's outsourcing a software project. Of course, I could go into much, much more detail about each of these, and I could talk about this for hours. I could create a whole online course, literally just on proper outsourcing and project management, right? Companies hired, a lot of some big companies hire a person that's solely dedicated to managing like outsourced software projects. So it's a pretty broad, like there's a much broader base of things that you can cover to avoid getting burned. But these will take you 80, like 90% of the way there, right? The rest depends on how hardcore you go with vetting and other things. But this is like, especially if you're a non-technical person, this should help you. And so there you go. This is the advice I had for today's video, and I hope this helps. I'm sure this is not the last time I will be talking about this topic. I'll probably continue in a future video soon, next week or after. And but if you have questions in the meantime, please let me know. Drop a comment or send me an email. Right? Well, again, thank you so much for joining me, and hope this helps. Have a nice day.